Welcome to Myths, Monsters, and Murders. I'm Shondi Keppel.
And I'm Phyllis York.
We're just two Lebanon locals that came together and bonded over our love of all things creepy and mysterious. We are here to bring you the stories of Missouri's myths, cryptids, crimes, and murders with an emphasis on keeping it local. Today's story is not for the faint of heart. Descriptions may be graphic, so listener discretion is advised. So, Phyllis, it's our second episode of Myths, Monsters, and Murders. How are you?
I'm great. Had a really nice time today seeing some of my favorite people. Now we're recording the podcast, and I got to look at all the new merch today. It all came in, and it looks amazing, and I can't wait for everybody to see it on mythsmonstersmurders.com.
That is exciting. So I thought today we'd start off by doing a quick icebreaker. And of course, I chose the icebreaker. Oh. So you have zero clue what I'm about to put you through, and you're welcome.
Oh, no.
So first question. We're going to play a game of Would You Rather. I've come up with some questions to ask you, and they're good.
Oh, shit.
You're going to love them. So, first question. Would you rather never use social media again or be forced to blog about your life in real time, kind of like The Truman Show?
Oh, crap. I'm an oversharer, so I would rather blog all day. People really need to know what I'm eating for breakfast and whether or not I'm having a no bones day.
I don't think I would want to blog. I don't want anyone to know what I'm doing. I don't need them to know that I just sat for, 5 hours and watched Love After Lockup or whatever other stupid trash TV show I am watching. So I would have to say that I would rather never use social media again. Second question, would you rather have a horrible short-term memory or a horrible long-term memory?
Oh my gosh. I would rather have a horrible long-term memory. I wouldn't be able to remember any of my childhood trauma. I wouldn't be as funny, but I would be able to sleep at night. How about you?
Oh, God, I would much rather have a horrible long-term memory so that I don't have to lay awake at night and think about all the embarrassing things that happened to me, 5, 10 plus years ago.
Amanda and I talked about that today when we were to Walmart. We said, oh my gosh, I just realized that the woman that borrowed $5 from me in 7th grade never paid me back. And I stalked her on MySpace for 6 months for that.
Exactly. I would much rather not have the anxiety that comes along with long-term memories. All right, so our last question, and this is my favorite one. Would you rather have Morgan Freeman narrate your life story or have Samuel L. Jackson say all your explicit phrases for you when needed?
Morgan Freeman all the way, because I know how to curse and I like to use my explicit words as much as I can whenever I can. I like to cuss all the time, every chance I get.
Beep. I personally would rather have Samuel L. Jackson say all my explicit phrases so my husband can no longer blame me when our child uses phrases like, what the f***? So that Samuel L. Jackson for sure. That way the blame can be passed on to somebody else.
Nice.
So those were great answers, Phyllis. I feel like I've really learned something about you today, even though we've spent the last... 2.5 years?
Holy crap.
Together? We're old. I'm old.
I'm older.
So now it's time to jump into our case, which our story today, it's a very sad one that unfortunately has left a lot of people with questions and not very many answers. We'll be covering the murder of Sharon Sabla today.
So you know I love Gatsby, but did you know that I'm also a Marvel fangirl?
Marvel or DC fangirl?
Well, I love Marvel. I'm Team Loki all the way.
Oh, I'm Team Dad Bod Thor. It's my favorite.
Oh, he's adorable. Whether it's sci-fi or comics or what kind of fangirling or fanboying you need to do, you can just go over to Massey's Comics. They have everything.
Check them out in the Interstate Shopping Center just down from King Cash Saver. Our story begins on a cool November morning in Lebanon, Missouri. On November 15th, 2008, a 6-year-old child and his grandfather were making the trek into the cool Lebanon, Missouri woods for a morning of deer hunting. Little did they know the gruesome discovery that waited for them on Highway AA.
So roughly 13 miles from Lebanon sits Kinfolk Road and Highway AA intersection. It was right near this spot that the hunters discovered this big, huge, hinged tool chest resting at the bottom of a hill against a fence.
And correct me if I'm wrong, there is some speculation regarding what kind of tool chest. We have been told it was a plastic hinged tool chest, but we have also been told
it was a plastic hinged toolbox that sits across the back of a pickup, like a pickup style tool chest that you see around these areas a lot. So there was a foul odor coming from this box, and they said there was liquid seeping out of it. It wasn't until, did the police use the tool?
Everything I read said that the sheriff's department is who used the bolt cutters.
Right. So they used bolt cutters to open it up, and inside they found the body of a woman. It had been folded in half and encased in 600 pounds of concrete. Steve Merle is our Laclede County coroner here, and he estimated that the woman was between 25 and 40, between 5'5" and 5'8", and weighed roughly 135 pounds. They estimated that she'd been deceased for between 10 days and 2 weeks before being discovered. Despite being almost covered in concrete, the coroner was also able to identify that she had medium-length hair and that most likely she'd had a child at some point in her life. In addition, the coroner reported that she was well cared for, had no tattoos, but did have her ears pierced at least once. She was also reportedly wearing pajamas. The cause of death was also identified at the time, but they opted to not release that information to the public.
It's hard to believe that someone this well taken care of wouldn't have been reported missing. At this time, there were no missing persons listed for the local area. So initially, they thought she wasn't from the area.
Right.
The local police department was completely stumped, which is not really surprising. We're a very small town, which, speaking with you so much about these local cases.
Right. Yeah, we have some notoriety for having
Less
in
than
the
stellar.
past, some less than stellar investigations that have led to complete cases being dropped by the prosecuting attorney because of the way evidence was gathered or whatnot. So, not as surprising as one would hope.
And I don't want anyone to think that we have any false belief that police departments operate the way that they do on television shows like CSI, all Criminal Minds, all of those. We are not naive. We do not believe that, things happen instantaneously. However, there's a pattern.
There is a pattern. The more episodes that we get into, the more you will see this pattern play out over and over again. So as they continued to examine the victim, they were unable to create a facial profile because of the concrete. But they were able to get her fingerprints and they got her DNA. But as time passed and no ID was made, local investigating parties ended up asking for national assistance in identifying her. And a lot of online individuals through web sleuths and places like that were trying to figure out who she was. So lots of tips were brought in, but nothing ended up revealing who she was.
It wasn't until December when a very well-meaning neighbor / friend approached the police department with some very interesting information. And we'll have more about that after a small break for this week's sponsors.
Shondi, do you know what I love? Costume parties. I want a Great Gatsby themed Christmas party.
Where are you going to find costumes this time of year?
Ozark Vision's costume shop. John is open year-round, and I can even order a Roaring Twenties balloon sculpture while I'm there.
That sounds awesome.
Oh, it will be. It will be.
Ozark Vision's costume shop on East 32 in Lebanon. And now, back to the show.
So, on or around December 5th, 2008, a well-meaning neighbor, like we just said a moment ago, reported to Laclede County Sheriff's Department that she had not seen her friend Sharon Sabla for quite some time. They were armed with this information. The Sheriff's Department reached out to Sharon's daughter, Ginger Kofelt. I hope I'm saying that name right.
We're probably not pronouncing that right, so please don't come for us.
So they reached out to Ginger in order to obtain a DNA sample for testing. If you remember, as we previously mentioned, they were unable to create any sort of facial profiling. DNA was obtained as well as a fingerprint, but as fate would have it, there was a match in the DNA. The body that 6-year-old deer hunter found that had been carefully folded up inside the tool chest, covered in 600 pounds of concrete, was Sharon Sabla.
And I don't know about you, but in researching this case, I did not find a lot of information as far as what other suspects they have. So it did not take long for local sheriff's department to hone in on Sharon's husband, Horst Sabla. He became a person of interest very, very quickly. There wasn't a lot of time passed between identifying Sharon's body and his initial arrest. He was arrested on December 10th, 2008, and during court proceedings, it was revealed that Horst Sabla had been held for 14 hours of questioning. 14 hours!
Yes, 14 hours. That's crazy. I mean, I'm not saying that you shouldn't interrogate a subject and you shouldn't, get to the truth of the matter, but I think like anytime you watch a murder documentary, if there has been extended periods of time where someone has been interrogated, quite often these people end up confessing to anything because they just get so, I don't know, I don't want to say brainwashed, but
they're tired.
Right.
They're exhausted. They're kept awake.
Right.
They're tired.
Right. And they're going through this horrible tragedy. And I'm not saying that Horst didn't do it or did do it, but you just find out that your wife didn't just leave and max out your credit cards and take all your money, but that she was inside a toolbox. If you weren't the murderer, you are going to be devastated.
And I do not claim to be an expert on questioning by the police. I don't claim to know what happened in that 14-hour window between, Mr. Sabla and the police department. But to me, 14 hours seems like a very long time. And I understand, the desperation to find out what happened to Sharon. But at the same time, how many Netflix documentaries, HBO documentaries, podcasts, how much information is out there about these exact situations where, persons of interest are arrested and held for hours and hours and questioned for long periods at a time, and eventually they get tired, they get exhausted, they just want out of that situation, and they're being told, just confess, just tell us what happened and we will let you out of here. I can't say that I wouldn't do the same thing in the same situation. I can't say I would never murder anyone. But I can't say that after 14 hours of being questioned about my significant other's death, that I would not just want to be out of that situation.
Right. Look at Brendan Dassey from Making a Murderer. I mean, we do know that Horst, he was a native German, and so he's already working, with that as a
It's working
issue
against him.
Yes. So
let's talk about what happened in that 14-hour window, because you have a lot of that information, hearing it from your husband.
Yes,
he was a part. He played a big part in reporting.
Right. He was at the trial. He had to see all of the gruesome pictures that they brought out. He sat through that entire trial, which was moved to Camden County, where you don't want to get transcripts from because it's super stupid expensive.
$560.50.
And 50 cents. And 50 cents. That's,
To send a PDF email. But, again, we digress.
Yes.
So, eventually a confession is exactly what happened.
Right. So, after 14 hours of questioning, Horst admitted to shooting his wife in the back of the head, folding her at the waist, and putting her inside the toolbox. He reported that at first he covered her body in lime and stored the toolbox in his garage before finally deciding it was time to move her. He then poured the concrete over her before sealing the toolbox shut. Horst explained that recently the couple had lost their home to foreclosure, so they were forced to move into a travel trailer together located at Thompson's RV park.
And we were able to confirm via court records, shout out to CaseNet, that the foreclosure process on the Sabla home had began in May of 2008. And by June of that same year, the Sabla home was indeed foreclosed on, and the property was returned according to the judgment. That's right. The word I'm looking for. According to the judgment, the property and the home was returned to the Federal National Mortgage Association.
Shout out to the housing crisis. So, on top of their home being foreclosed on, Horst and Sharon had pretty serious medical issues that they had been dealing with. Horst and his wife had been diagnosed with HIV because Sharon contracted the disease during a surgical procedure. Horst reported that Sharon had threatened to shoot herself if he didn't do it for her. Horst also stated that he moved the toolbox from his van and pushed it downhill. It almost killed him.
And that's a direct quote. Pushing it downhill almost killed him. So after Horst's confession, more and more information was coming out of the woodwork. Horst and Sharon's neighbors, Neil and Cheryl, actually stepped forward and reported that the day after Sharon's body was discovered, Horst told them that Sharon left for quote-unquote no reason, and that she took, again, quote, $32,000 and maxed out his credit cards, end quote. This caused both Neil and Cheryl to become very suspicious. And anyone named Cheryl, that's just automatically, they're going to be suspicious if their name is Cheryl.
Gosh, that tracks.
Exactly. So this caused Cheryl and Neil to become very suspicious. However, despite their skepticism, they reported that Horst continued to participate in water cooler talk with them, and he told both of them, and I believe this was told, jokingly, and again, this is a direct quote from Neil and Cheryl, that if Horst really, quote, wanted to kill my wife, I'd just tie a rock around her neck or a piece of concrete and throw her in the lake, end quote. And to me, saying something like that, it's very sketchy.
Yes.
I can see why people would think he did it.
Yeah, let me see. If my wife disappears, the first thing I'm not going to do, make random statements about how I would have done it.
To people named Cheryl.
Exactly. The Cheryls of the world, step up. We know you're out there.
We need you.
Yes. So on December 11th, 2008, Horst was brought to Laclede County Court where he waived his right to a preliminary hearing. I didn't know that that was as common as it is for individuals to waive their preliminary hearing. And maybe I'm understanding it wrong, but I believe the preliminary hearing is where the courts just test whether or not there's enough evidence to move forward.
I feel like if I'm being charged with murder, I want it tested.
Yes, I would.
But I don't know how. I don't have experience with court systems. I've never been arrested. Whoop whoop.
I remember the murder trial for the woman that murdered my uncle, and I remember the preliminary trial just barely. I don't think it lasted 5 minutes.
I know a lot of people. You read that a lot, and I didn't know it wasn't just like a TV show thing, because again,
right.
We have a right to preliminary hearing. So at this point, Horst pled
not guilty.
Oh, color me shocked.
So he had a pretrial conference on December 22nd, 2008. And at this point, we're just going through court formalities. Eventually, we reach a motion hearing on March of 2009 where Horst's attorney, Stacy Patterson, who you'll hear that name in a bunch of the cases that we have. She was the defense attorney in several of these cases.
That's not surprising, considering she is a public defender, right? And we are a very small county.
Yes, with a lot of murder cases, strangely enough. So Stacy Patterson ended up filing a change of venue motion.
And I'm sure most people listening understand what a change of venue motion is. However, just in case we have any listeners that don't or are unfamiliar with that term, a change of venue motion basically asserts that the defendant would be unable to have any sort of fair trial, either by jury or by judge, because judges are assigned by county.
Right.
That if it were to remain in the originating county, there would not be a fair trial.
Right.
And I think in this case, considering how small Laclede County is, how small Lebanon is, I think that there would be a very slim chance that he would have any sort of fair trial here. That's not to say that any of our judges would, be biased or anything like that.
Definitely not.
Okay, well, we are not asserting that on this podcast.
No, we are not. I know several of the judges, and most of them are pretty stand-up people.
And so that's, in the end, the case did get transferred.
Right. So on March 23rd of 2009, Horst's change of venue motion was granted and the case was moved to Camden County. And for those of you that don't know, Camden County is just a hop, skip, and a jump away from Laclede County. And a new fun fact for you is that Camden County's most recent claim to fame was all of the partying that happened down there on spring break at Party Cove, which created a giant spread of COVID.
And they were actually tracing it back to Lake of the Ozarks and Camden County.
Thousands of cases.
That's how many cases sprung up from this. So, regardless of whether you are COVID denier or not.
Science is real, man. Science is real.
That is the most recent Camden County claim to fame.
I'm not sure how much of a claim that is, but they can have it if they
want it. It is what it is. So after the case was transferred to Camden County, there was a ton of back and forth. Again, a lot of legal mumbo-jumbo things happening that maybe I don't really understand. I would love to try to, but I just don't. And so all during this time, Horst has remained incarcerated. So finally on April 5th of 2010, and keep in mind, Sharon was located in November of 2008, and Horst was arrested in December of 2008. So finally on April 5th, 2010, that was the first day of a 5-day-long jury trial. And on the 5th and final day, the case was submitted to the jury at exactly 1:38 p.m. And I know this because I read the judgment. For some reason, CaseNet, newer cases, they actually directly upload the document, like the signed document from the judge. And so 1:38, it was submitted. And by 3 p.m., the jury had returned with their verdict. And Horst was found guilty of murder in the first degree and armed criminal action.
You know what else I need for my Great Gatsby party?
No, what now?
I need some gorgeous 1920s Art Deco glassware.
Where are you ever going to find that?
At Mr. Eclectic in Lebanon. While I'm there, I'm going to drool over the mid-century modern chairs I saw yesterday. Ugh, so much orange.
That place is great. They're always posting their sales on their Facebook page.
Bobby and Tony are the best. They have an amazing selection.
Mr. Eclectic, 304 West 2nd Street in Lebanon. Now, at this point, I kind of want to take a step back and talk about what you know that happened at that trial, because there were a lot of questions that were brought up regarding duct tape and different DNA, missing money.
Yeah, $32,000. The $32,000 that they were said to have, and it is believed that they had this money, has never been accounted for. And that is something that Horst's new attorney is using in current filings.
Appeals.
I couldn't think of the word appeals. Yeah. So not only is the $32,000 missing, but there was duct tape wrapped around Sharon's head before she was covered in concrete. So that duct tape had 2 sets of DNA on it that were not Sharon's and were not Horst's.
So neither one of them. Just 2 completely different DNA profiles.
Right.
Did it specify on the inside or the outside of the tape?
On the inside of the tape.
So sticky side.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the prosecuting attorney, Angie Hemphill Wright, explained that away as maybe it got on there from the factory, in one of those giant machines. Have you ever seen how it's made? I've seen them make duct tape. It's a giant machine. There is no human interaction with the tape.
So, yeah, no ability to put DNA on no, human workers are not touching the inside of that that duct tape.
Right.
The sticky side.
But there is 2 sets of DNA on the inside of that duct tape that did not belong to Horst or Sharon. $32,000 unaccounted for, as well as a man who says that he loved his wife more than anything, and that he said that if you ask anybody, that they will tell you that she ruled the roost, and they'd been together for a long time. I don't remember. I think it's like over 20 years, and they stood by each other through thick and thin.
I mean, you would have to believe that, considering the diagnosis that Sharon got after her surgical procedure.
Right.
And, I mean, Horst eventually
got it as well.
Got HIV as well, and they stuck through it. That in itself is a very difficult thing to overcome as a person, but as a couple remaining together, there's just a lot of
unanswered
questions. During the trial also I was reading through Horst's appeal paperwork, because it's all posted on CaseNet. There were also concerns with certain individuals not being called to testify by his attorney, I believe is what I was reading.
Right.
Because his initial appeal was based on, his most recent appeal was based on ineffective counsel, calling out specifically his attorney, Miss Patterson.
Yes, Stacey Patterson, that she did not call witnesses, and that these were witnesses that clearly would have put him in a more positive light. And that's another thing that we'll talk about in another episode that Miss Patterson was involved with, is that some of her other clients have said she was not the most effective counsel, that she just wanted to get it done and over with.
So after the conviction, Horst Sabla wasted no time filing for an appeal. His latest one was actually in 2012, and as I said before, it was based on ineffective counsel. And unfortunately for Horst, this did not work out for him.
Right.
On June of 2014, the judge actually ruled against Horst, and his conviction was upheld. And Horst is currently incarcerated in the Missouri Department of Corrections system, where he will remain for the rest of his life.
Right.
And Phyllis, I know you have reached out to Horst, because he's in Missouri.
Right.
We know where he's at.
Right. He's a Missouri Department of Corrections inmate, so you can reach out to them through the system. And I've
JPay.
So I've reached out.
No, we did not go on writeaconvict.com. That's not how we found it.
We weren't looking for boyfriends.
Although I would pay money to get to star on an episode of Love After Lockup, even though I love my husband. I love me some Love After Lockup.
I don't know what that is.
Oh my God, Phyllis. We're going to have a conversation after this.
Okay. I just watched Only Murders in the Building. It's so good.
Never heard of it.
Oh, it's so good. They start
Nope. You're digressing.
Oh, yes, sorry. So, yes, and everything that I've found says that they are going to try and appeal again. So, hopefully we will have more updates for you on this case at some point.
And as far as I'm concerned, I don't know one way or another whether Horst is to blame for Sharon's murder. I know there's a lot of people that are convinced that he did it. And I just have a lot of questions about what happened at that hearing, what evidence wasn't presented, what evidence was kind of just written off as, not being believable, aka the
duct tape.
The duct tape with the two other DNA profiles on it. And so it would be interesting to see what happens with Horst's next go around as far as appealing. It takes a long time, obviously. He filed, the last one in 2012 and didn't get a ruling until 2014.
Yeah.
And I don't know isn't there a limit to how many times you can appeal?
Yeah, it goes up through the system and yeah.
And as far as I know, what I found on Missouri CaseNet was that it was the Missouri Supreme Court that said, we're upholding this. You are guilty. Ineffective counsel is not what happened. You were represented adequately, which I'm not necessarily sure that I agree with. But again, I do not claim to have a law degree in any way, shape, or form. But yeah, so we'll see what happens.
Yes, we'll see what happens. And I think that brings us to the end of this episode.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys joining and listening. And don't forget to check out mythsmonstersmurders.com. We'll get merch listed.
Yes, and I'll put pictures of Sharon and Horst. And
I think the plan is to try to blog a little bit with every episode so that you are able to see the things that we are looking at. The pictures of people, obituaries, court documents, whatever we have available to us. We want to be able to present those same things to our listeners.
Exactly. So yeah, mythsmonstersmurders.com. You can check out our TikTok. It's my TikTok, really. It's PHYLLIE417. But I do share a lot of stuff from from the different cases we're doing on there.
We should probably consider starting a Myths, Monsters, and Murders TikTok.
We can do that.
We should do that. I don't like TikTok, but I'm too old for that business. We have a Facebook group.
Yes, we do.
Feel free to join it. We like to see locals, but also other Missouri natives join in and give us some cases you want to hear about. Some cryptids. I love the creepy crawlies. So
yeah, we're going to have to go over Momo, the Missouri monster. The Joplin spook light.
What is it? The Devil's Chair?
Yeah.
I actually want to make a trip up there to sit on it at midnight to see. That is definitely not what that's called. So thanks for joining us and have a great day.
Yeah, we'll see you next time.
Myths, Monsters, and Murders. Bye.
Bye. Myths, Monsters, and Murders, hosted by Phyllis York and Shondi Keppel, produced by Ken York. Tune in next time.